Well, happy birthday, first of all.
Oh,
I mean,
happy birthday.
to be celebrating uh, this next revolution around the sun. How you feeling?
I feel good. It's a good birthday for ignorance to start on. 52.
How is this birthday different from any of the other ones? Or is it?
I've been saying all year that at 52 I'm playing with a full deck.
I like that. I like that. Yes.
Okay.
The day before my 52nd birthday, I wake up in the morning sometimes with subjects on my mind, and I woke up with a heavy one that sent me into study yesterday, and my ignorance just flourished. And I'm less ignorant now, but scratch the surface on a whole area of Roman history. Cicero was on my mind.
Okay, so tell us about him. Now, because we've got Socrates. I mean, we got all these other people, right? That's Greek, though, isn't he? See,
Socrates.
Ignorant. Socrates. He's Greek, Roman. Anyway, tell us about Cicero.
I would have guessed Cicero were Greek.
See?
But he was Roman. And for what's important here, he's kind of the father of natural law.
Yeah.
He framed the old philosophers, probably Socrates,
Yeah.
and framed their words and new concepts, and was maybe the original libertarian and Republican. And his theories actually put together some of the opposing forces that we have in our society right now. The whole thing is very interesting. But before we get into any of that,
Wow.
right?
I'm impressed. Roman history.
That was the day before my birthday where I thought I would know everything. Ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
So,
The full deck.
the full deck. So far, jokers.
Well, jokers keep you curious and open to the moment. Because I see jokers as tricksters, coyotes, you know, the wisdom and folly.
I like it.
Yeah.
Wisdom and folly.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So the question for Ignorance Week that showed up as the exercise is an exercise about, if you think of every single thing that there is in the world to know,
Okay.
what percentage do you think you personally know? And I have gotten answers on that question from 75% all the way down to a 0.0000 can't even comprehend. The 75% did come back to me the next day and revise it to 50.
Oh, well. Oh, joy.
Well, for me, it was a good study in what people perceive.
Yes.
And if you believe that you know 50% of everything that there is to know, there's a huge amount of ignorance operating. Ignorance, in and of itself, has no intention at all.
Ignorance has no intention.
Right.
Okay, got it.
But we see it with intention all the time. We see ignorance, instead of being a place to learn something or to teach something,
Mm-hmm.
we see it as a place to shame or ridicule or just feel judgmental.
The bluster, the overcompensating, because I find that people who are comfortable with what they don't know will often ask more questions.
Yes.
There's no ego attachment to asking the question.
Exactly.
Because I know that Brian and I have been together 12 and a half, 13 and a half years, just about. Yeah, 07. And in the beginning of our relationship, because I'm trained as a lawyer, which means brainwashing on one level, but the training is to ask obvious questions, not assuming facts. Don't assume facts that are not in evidence. I mean, you get that over and over again in a myriad of ways.
Right.
And it used to annoy him, and I would say, you gotta understand, I have to establish where we're ignorant or where we made assumptions versus where we haven't. Now, after a decade or so, we kind of got the fluidity of it right. But initially, I would have to remind him over and over again. It's not that I'm ignorant, it's just I'm trying to establish what we agree upon or what we both know together.
And what we
Don't.
agree upon and know together, sometimes we walk away from a conversation thinking we both are in agreement on a certain set of facts, and it turns out a week later those weren't the set of facts that that person agreed to. So going back in over and over and really understanding another person's frame of mind.
Yes.
So going back and looking at knowing what mentors they had, knowing what inspires them, knowing what produces creativity, knowing what they lack.
The ignorance piece that I got this week, amongst many, would be defunding the police. Colin Kaepernick, Angela Davis, Level, Level. They have a blog, a space where they're writing, I believe, 30 articles over the next month that deals with defunding the police. We go into what we think it means. And it doesn't mean what we're ignorant as I was ignorant. I ain't gonna speak for you. I was ignorant as to how to what it presented in terms of it's about moving money toward mental health, toward homelessness, toward housing, and getting people to understand that the abolitionist movement, second time, third time, however you want, from the 18th, 19th century, is that, and I believe this was in Angela Davis's blog, was that back in the 19th century, which I was ignorant of, is that they were talking about a more humane slavery. Like we want to talk about reforming the police to make it more humane. No.
Right.
If the police were founded in Fugitive Slave Act, Slave Patrol, all of what we know that it was sourced in, reforming is a milquetoast, I'm gonna vomit you out of my mouth because you're lukewarm kind of a thing. Reformation is giving the systemic inequality and racism more room to breathe instead of radically taking the budget. You train them, yes, what you do, but you set up different ways to access the help. That you don't have someone who is female, poor, black, all those intersections. You don't send the police to take care of her. If there is a noise, if there's something wrong with noise, if there's something wrong with whatever the complaint, if you know that this person has this issue, you send social worker, you send someone who is not bringing a gun. I mean, because I don't care what frustrates me or what frustrates me about the comfortable level of ignorance in this culture is that why did it take a knee to someone's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds for there to be an outcry? I don't understand what has to happen. And Brian to this day has not seen the image. He refuses. And I watched it for 5 seconds and it's still burned in my brain.
I wouldn't watch it for a while.
I wish I had continued to be ignorant of that image. And it just gets to a point that the cortisol, the stress, the things that I know about what happens to the body based on seeing images like that, based on the complacency in which this culture, this nation, that we have to even put systemic in front of racism so it can be more comfortable for people to talk about. Because systemic and racism, we have to talk about institutionalizing. Because if we just say racism, then we get reverse racism. Then we get I have no power. I have no I have no power in this system. Yes, I get it through being a male, but with male without money, male without the family, male without the heteronormative discourse, discounts, undercuts. I am knowledgeable of that. And it's just no longer comfortable, as if it ever were really comfortable, but it is getting increasingly uncomfortable to continue to live in this country with the complacency about not knowing your history, not knowing and being ignorant about it. And it's just, what, Fannie Lou Hamer? I'm just
Sick and tired of it. Sick and tired of
being sick and tired. I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired. That I know. And what I don't know, what I'm ignorant of, is when do I get to just be mediocre? When can I just not have to be exceptional or magical or show what I excel at? I mean, even with the Colin Kaepernick and one of the things that happened in some of the responses I read to his blog, and granted, he called Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, he called it a lynching, but one of the responses went to, well, this is one of the reasons why Black Americans haven't progressed, because he's lying. It wasn't a lynching. And that was his subjective interpretation. And this white writer felt comfortable enough, white male, felt comfortable enough to insinuate and conflate, now he didn't insinuate anything, but to conflate Colin's use of hyperbole and rhetoric as a reason to why Black Americans hadn't progressed. And what I would really want whites to get from any of this is that there's just a general ignorance around how your individual acts are individualized. That you don't ever, when the domestic terrorists, I mean, we're just not being able to say that the Kyle Rittenhousers and all of what happened with Governor Whitmer in Michigan, that we're just now starting to say, wow, this is domestic terrorism, and it speaks to heteronormative white male whiteness, but in a response to, and an unconsidered connection to, the whiteness is in response to blackness and to the other. We didn't have All Lives Matters, Blue Lives Matters, anything of that until 2013 in July, we had Black Lives Matter. And then all of a sudden, we had to have a binary, opposition, egocentric, not a soulful, wow, why would they need to say this? And it's just painful. And I wish I were ignorant of the pain. And then I go into my spiritual self and I chose this body, I chose this time to be here. And I get all these upper soulful chakras around it.
Well, let me take it from there.
Thank you.
Breathe for a minute.
All right, thank you, baby. Water and breath and alignment.
That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot to take in, and I'm even sitting here listening to you and knowing you as well as I do, and for as long as I do, I can't wrap my head around every piece of what affected you during that. It was powerful and it's emotional, and I mean, I just love you, and I feel. And so I can speak from a place of feeling, and I can speak about ignorance from a place of feeling. And I think you brought up ego and soul right there at the end. And we are human beings that are very egocentric. And when you want to look at why and how, the universe has its own timing. And holding ego accountability for ignorance is something that we do because why? We don't understand why people can't see and think what is so clear to us. But we have no idea what their experience has created for them. Maya Angelou said, if you know better, do better. Or if you know better, you do better. And I've shortened it to, if you know better, do better. And if you see someone not doing better, you have to assume there's an ignorance at play that keeps them limited. And you say that you wish you were ignorant of the pain. I don't believe that's true. And I don't believe you're a person who could ever be not magical or mediocre. It's not in you. And I think that Black people as a whole contain some magical ability that is in the root system that is untapped in terms of expression that is heard and resonates against ego.
So in the sense of soul food, soul music, soul, and
not even that. Not even those
that.
things. I'm talking about a perseverance. I'm talking about a heart that beats with something that says you're alive and you're valid and you're an individual and you're attached to everything. I mean, just something that keeps time in tight spaces while you watch all these other things happen that don't.
Well, can I interject something then? About being mediocre and not, you couldn't afford to do that and then whatever. And I think of the pundits who talk about anything, they speak from Angela Davis to all of them. But my question would be, and I use this often because it's from a playwright that I knew who is since deceased, what does the line sell about? In other words, if you're selling an idea and you are talking about that to people and you're seen as the voice of whatever the struggle is.
Right.
My question, because we're all programmed, I don't care who you are, I don't care what. We're all programmed, so I'm always wondering when I hear the pundits and it's not, hey, they're doing their job, but I wonder, how do they take care of themselves? What does the wine seller buy?
I know that what this spiritualist lawyer buys is just being able to communicate the power in my vulnerability about this. So if you're hearing this and you're getting, whatever, I can't speak to what you're getting or not getting, but in terms of the ignorance, I know how powerful speaking vulnerability can be. I also know when you talk about the magical, the mediocre, when we mention all of that, I like the phrase, here's the diplomat, I like the phrase ancestral resilience. That when I get to these spaces, I think, well, what would my great-grandfather do? What would granddaddy do? But what I do like about where we are in this space and time as a planetary, well, let's just speak to the evolution of our nation. I don't think anyone, if you say you're ignorant of or you're not willing to accept a conversation on the words systemic racism, you're lying to yourself. You're ignoring either out of a willful ignorance because it's comfortable for you to continually to reap the results and the fruits of that, or there's some political aim, or I just no longer accept in my reality, in my personal exchange reality, that you're ignorant of the inequalities. That no.
So that's how you handle,
That's
the
how.
mindset.
That's the mindset that you do not. You're. And one of my favorite songs by Alanis Morissette from the City of Angels is "Uninvited," and it's about you just you get uninvited from my life. I just, in order to stay healthy and to stay as a support for other people and to stay from my anahata, to stay in the unwounded, unstruck parts of my heart that I know still exist, you get no audience with me. Except maybe this. I just, no. And I understand about tapping into energy and reservoirs and people think differently. I get all of that in my 7th and 6th chakra. But when that energy steeps down into my body, and I have people, and if any of you watching this, that are no longer talking to me, no longer friends, because you thought years ago I was out of my mind when I was attempting, probably poorly, decoupling privilege from racism. You couldn't hear racism, so I had to reword it to do privilege. And now we're 20 plus years later, and you still haven't asked, well, how you doing, motherfucker?
I would never call you that.
No, but but in the way that I said it, it's more of affection. But it's this sense of, you know what you haven't done, what you didn't accept 20, 15, 20, 25 years ago, because this is not new. I've had these conversations. This is again, what I know about growing up in Detroit is that it was a separate and equal experience, as much as you can get in this culture. And you know that the Great Lakes has been called our third coast. So all that water and all that just emotional collective energy, you can't have the water and air that both of us have and not have this ability to riff on our collective shared soulful humanity. You just can't. And I know I'm in this body to be able to speak to the experiences, but this spiritualist, what I buy is authenticity. I buy people who are willing to look at themselves in the mirror of where they have success and where it's been given and where they need to work. So that's another thing that keeps me fueled and keeps me fed, that I can see where the soul and the humanity of the person comes through, even in my own pain. And you're right, I wouldn't. The pain ain't no. The pain is what fuels the ability to ask the questions, the ability to seek the healing, the ability to, yeah.
And this is why I love watching you do this work and watching myself do it, because we have all these feelings that are ego-based feelings. And then there is a soul measure that steps back and says, okay, we're in 2020 and we're seeing clearly and we don't like it.
No.
And you don't need to let people inside your personal
And I haven't. Bye.
that are bringing things that are difficult, but finding respect for someone who knows 0.5% of everything in the world, and every single thing they know is completely different than everything that you know, and you can't fathom how they think or feel the way they do, and I can't either, but they do.
And in that, and then what I've learned, and you've helped me with this, what I've learned from this system, the breath, alignment, and water system, is that I can see myself, and this image is just coming to me. If I saw my life as a castle, I determine when the moat goes down, when that door goes down. Doesn't mean you can't set your castle up right next to me. Doesn't, and you know, in the lawyer we have castle doctrine, and that's the stand your ground, and you can shoot people if they come through. So there's a whole legal thing just on the castle doctrine alone. Oh, look it up. And I can set up the boundaries, but I can also open the door. I can also let them know. Those are the things that give me a sense of
continuity with spirit.
Continuity. But you know what I heard? Zora Neale Hurston. Their eyes were watching God. In the sense of the synchronicities or the alleged synchronicities and the interconnectedness, that's how God and Goddess, that's one of the ways that God and Goddess work. I mean, that it's...
If your eyes can go there, right?
If yes.
Then the
I know that.
ignorance-
That's 1% of
the ignorance
that I don't.
that you don't like is still whole. It's present. It's part of humanity. It's part of our collective journey. And it's terrible. But for you to seek refuge in a place that only knows no pain,
Yeah.
keeps you from wholeness.
True. Because without the pain or the grief, in a dualistic three-dimensional, the joy isn't as sweet. The joy isn't as deep. Some would even say you can't even really experience it. However, I do know if it's not, it certainly ain't 50%. But I wouldn't say double digits. But what I know on a soul level and have experienced in this life as well as others is I chose this, which means I can choose how to respond to it. And those people who judge, don't get, whatever, we can't stipulate, however you want to riff on that, Godspeed. This is where I love the lawyer part of me, is that God, Goddess, however you see that, it's like equal opportunity. Belongs to everybody. And it's not my job to educate everybody.
No, it is 100%. It is not your job to educate. However,
Yeah.
the level of judgment that goes against ignorance, when ignorance may be a person who watches NASCAR and knows about cows and lived on a farm their whole life and doesn't have one inkling to understand anything because there's nothing put in front of them to ever create that in their lives. I don't know that person. I just know they're out there. And I know that people whose lives are not geared towards anything but whatever is right in front of them, their ignorance isn't willful.
Mm-hmm.
Willful ignorance, I think, is a different conversation, because I don't think willful ignorance is even real. You know something.
Well, yeah, that's where we can get into what's negligent. And
Ignorance is truly not knowing. There is nothing intentional with ignorance.
Okay, so if we go and run into knowing as a Gnostic, as you're curious about, and you're talking about ignorance as there's a lack of curiosity about, possibly?
Lack of curiosity, but based on what? Based on it's never shown up in your life? Based on these issues have never...
that's where I go into that there are different ages of souls. There are different experiences within a soul that you have.
So when you're dealing with a really young soul that's doing this, from a purely ego-based perspective, it's like a 2-year-old. We don't want to kick them to the curb because they don't know what to do, but we also don't want to deal with them all the time unless they're ours to deal with. So we're going to send love. We're going to say, aren't they cute?
Yes.
We're going to watch them grow and learn and trust that the
Don't give them over to the ward of the state. Don't go over there.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, it's really,
I feel you. Totally.
Holding feelings and judgment against people who have held feelings and judgment against us is a human condition. Stepping out of the way of needing to feel the way somebody else did, or needing to show them that what they did hurt, or show them their ignorance, That's not my job. My job is to stand rooted in what I know and be strong and send love everywhere I can. I will not be able to affect, hardcore Trump supporters with my words, but I can send love all day long through the root system, all the way down where everything connects, and send it back up towards them as far as it'll go. And maybe in their dreams it'll reach them. Maybe when they're listening to a good song, it will reach them. My words mean nothing. But my love can transform. The
You guys are
most
great with
stubborn.
expressions. You're great at expression. I mean, watching the two of you.
Well, I was thinking that to just add a little sprinkle of astrology, she's the sign before me. Libra is before Scorpio. And what Libra, I can't imagine, well, I'm not going to, how about that? Another sign that I would have this conversation with. Because what Libra does for Scorpio is that you pull us back into the middle way, the Tao, the neutrality of Switzerland, to see all perspectives. And since I'm the sign after that, it resonates sort of like background music or Father, Mother, Confessor. I mean, that I can feel that. And then I have energy in it, but that's not the point. Point is that I know that everybody evolves at their own pace. And I don't have to see your evolution. I mean, I don't have to witness it, although I do sometimes like to say I'm a member of the evolutionary police. But the point is, I don't have to see. But when I made mention of the moat and the stipulation of what you will or will not see or know, however that is, that's the more fiery, engaged part that wants to wake mofos up. And there's some egocentric attachment to that. But when I'm in my more soulful, here it is, folks. I mean,
I feel like I come up against ignorance,
Yeah.
hundreds of times a day. My
I bet you
own
do.
and other people's. And I just send some energy towards it because we're 2020. We are seeing it now. We are seeing things clearly that we didn't see before, and they are a lot worse than we knew or thought. We were all holding this idea of normal that really is nothing. Whatever normal is, there's not a person that fits that description. And we're all hiding our shame, and we're all hiding our little peccadillos and little things that make us unique. So busy covering those up with our egos that asking people to see something that doesn't affect them directly is really asking against a human condition. As much as you want people to be awake, we're all just waking up. People have sand in their eyes still, like nobody's gotten the stuff off their face, like we're not there yet. But we're on the path. And that's the journey we're taking. And this process, and specifically Ignorance Week, gives us a real chance to explore a subject that, I sure didn't expect to be talking about this today, but I'm really glad we did. I'm glad it came up like this because it gives a chance to really look at ignorance from so many different perspectives and try on a few different things, and putting intentions for other people is limiting to them and to us.
well, yeah, because it's about also knowing how to be okay with where you are, too. Because we need reference points. We need a point where we say, okay, this is where I was, and this is where I'm going. I blame the chickpeas that you made. That's where I'm going. You made these great chickpeas with this. You spice
Yeah,
your
they
pepper,
are
so
good.
so I, you know,
They
so,
are
you know,
good.
it accentuated the fire. And did Mercury go retrograde yet?
It is. I heard it's going today.
Yeah, what's it? Yeah, I think it's somewhere in here.
For next week. I don't know. It's
Yeah, somewhere.
it's
We're
coming.
definitely in
It's
the
coming.
shadow,
We're on it.
And it's in
We like to
retro-
do things a little early. We're Aries rising.
Yes.
That's the other thing. We are both Aries rising. We're on this ship at the front. So holding accountability to the people at the way back,
I want.
they're not any more whole or
Didn't-
connected to everything.
I just want some responsibility to respond. You know, just take it in. You know, even if you have to act like a bear and hibernate on it for a while, that I can. But
I want that too.
yeah, just
I want that too.
yeah, so. Because I don't want anybody to presume that I think that you're accountable for the wrongs, for every wrong, but you are responsible for knowing more, or at least
And it's impossible to know every
everything.
wrong.
Yes, and
It's
it's
impossible to know every wrong. I mean, just think of, on the scale of just benign ignorance. Every single offense ever made to a person of color. You can't know it all. That's more things than you could ever know about or count. Right?
yes.
The volume.
However, I it's time to know the broad picture. It's time to know that it's time to at least, if someone were to say, what's a bottom line of knowledge just around Black, indigenous folk, I would start with something like the redlining of the 1930s. You know, just we don't. You know, we can talk about slavery. We can talk about slave patrol. But there's just been stuff that, and if we don't even want to do that, you can just talk about the way in which female politicians are characterized versus male, or.
But what about the people that don't have any inkling to consider things like that yet?
Grow up. Grow within. That we're moving, and I make an argument that the pandemic and the environment and that problems are larger than any one nation state. All of that expansionism and all of this lack of needing to ask certain questions, the earth, the environment, economic inequalities, rate, all of that is occurring without or outside of ourselves to get us to ask different questions. In 1940, you probably could say, before the Marshall Plan, before things happened, but you can just look at what Europe did in the 40s in terms of investing in the dignity of human individuals. Don't mean they ain't got no racism, because I've been there, they do. Or nationalism. But what they have, apart from that, is investing in the dignity of the human being, that we as Americans can't even wear masks. I mean, it boggles. It boggles, you know, we say it boggles the mind. This boggles my soul.
Let's go back to ignorance, though.
Yeah, I know.
Let's go back to people pulling their information from certain sources, and
Yeah,
they
see,
feel
there
as
she goes, yeah.
justified in their beliefs as you do in yours, and they've got sources to support it. And if we sit in the space where we're like, how do you not get it? How do you not at least know this? How do you not at least have this bare minimum of threshold? How do you not have common sense? We're exacerbating the problem. Because the fact is they don't. And if you can't accept that fact right there,
And so
then start from there.
I see you can accept it and model. Well, they're not going to talk to me anyway.
100% model.
You
And
know.
100%
You know.
expect.
But that's where I go into, we're all being, if we want to use a Christianized term, we're all being born again. And where I know that this is where I feel the ignorance between what's tolerance versus what's coexistence. And tolerance is we agree to disagree and whatever. But coexistence is where we have the more difficult discussion. And that's why I was riffing on the dignity of each individual human being. And I realize our nation is just 244 years old. And we've got a lot of growing to do.
We're babies.
Well, you couldn't have told me that this is where this conversation was going to go today anyway, on your birthday too. And but you got the full deck. So, well, actually, the next 2 years you get your jokers. So yeah. So the next two. But what I can say about this time period is regenerate, and we transform, and we can learn these lessons through joy as well as through suffering.
And this is a conversation that just goes on and on.
Yes.
Wow.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. Everybody have a great day.
You too. Thanks. Have a good one.